What if everything you thought you knew about Paul was wrong? What if Paul didn't abandon the Torah, but instead called Gentiles to a higher way of living, a way rooted in faith, guided by the example of Jesus? And here's the most pressing question. Have we misunderstood Paul so deeply that we've missed the very heart of his message? Paul's writings dominate the New Testament. For centuries, they've been used to define Christian theology, but what if the church got it wrong? What if Paul wasn't preaching freedom from the Torah, but freedom through the Torah? Freedom to align our lives with God's will by following the Master, Jesus. Let's go back to the beginning. Paul was a Torah-observant Jew. He never saw Jesus as a departure from the law, but as its ultimate fulfillment. To Paul, Jesus wasn't just a savior, he was the way to live a life aligned with God, the way to embody love, humility, and righteousness. So why then has Paul's message been twisted into something so different? Here's where it gets interesting. Paul didn't tell Gentiles to become Jews. He didn't demand that they adopt the entire Torah. Instead, he called them to follow God through Jesus, beginning with the foundational principles of the Torah, the universal laws known as the Noahide commandments. But here's the twist. Paul didn't stop there. He called Gentiles to a higher standard, one that transcended mere rules and invited them to walk in the very footsteps of Jesus. Have you ever wondered why Paul wrote so much about faith? To Paul, faith wasn't just belief. It was trust in God expressed through action. It was a faith that transformed lives and aligned them with God's will. And Paul pointed to Jesus as the perfect example of this faith, a life lived fully in obedience to God. So where did it all go wrong? Why do we hear about faith alone as if actions don't matter? Why has Paul's message been used to sever faith from works when he himself insisted that following Jesus required both? The problem isn't Paul, it's how the church misunderstood him. Over centuries, his teachings were stripped from their Jewish roots, creating a theology that Paul never intended. The result? A distorted message that replaced Jesus' call to action with a passive faith, a faith that Paul would never have recognized. Think about this. If Paul taught that Jesus was the way, why do so many Christians today ignore Jesus' teachings in favor of Paul's? Why has Paul become the dominant voice when he himself was pointing us back to the Master? This isn't just a historical question. It's a question that could reshape our faith. What if Paul wasn't calling us away from Torah, but deeper into God's will? What if he was showing us how to follow Jesus, not just in belief, but in practice? The truth is waiting to be uncovered. Are you ready to rediscover Paul's true mission and follow the way as he intended?